Hello, welcome to the Unknown Years show. Here I have with me Lucy Clark. Welcome, Lucy.
Oh, thank you. I'm so happy to be on the show.
Yeah, me too. Like, this is the second time I've done the Unknown Years show, so I'm like excited, and I'm really excited about our topic today, which is about friendship.
You look
So,
very official too with the microphone.
I do like it's Jamal's. I have no idea how to use it really. He has to show me every time. I'm like, I think I moved something. Can you fix it? So I look official, but I don't feel official. um, cool. I got my notes here. So, what I wanted to ask you, Lucy, because you actually approached me about this topic, about doing a video. So, what inspired you? Like, where did that come from?
Yeah, well, I guess I had the idea that we could do a video on friendship. Just because well, as you know, since last March, really like when the pandemic really like shut everything down and we couldn't leave our houses or see each other, we started, I don't really know like how it happened, but we just started talking on the phone like once a week, and we usually talk on Tuesdays, like on our lunch break for an hour, and just like kind of catch up and share prayer requests and pray for each other. And we've continued that now for like over a year, which is really cool. This month, and obviously, yeah, we're gonna keep it going. So I don't know. Yeah, I just thought we should talk about that.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, so it's exactly how Lucy said. And for me personally, I had not been doing that for, I think, ever before, and like with Christian friends. So it was new. Only when we could both go to New King Church in South Burlington, and only when I started going to New King, I actually started doing these kind of things, and or even being open to it. Actually, Lucy, our first acquaintance, I think you were on the greeting team, and we met, and I was just like, there's lovely people that come greet you when you go in the church, and they just say hi and ask you how you are, and that's how we met the first time. And then later you invited me to your books and brunch club. And we were like reading, like you and Sarah had a books and brunch idea, and we were reading like religious books, and it was like all women. And that was like pretty much when we started becoming friends. And I remember that also being really new for me as well, going to any sort of Christian community group other than when I was a teenager and like in a young adults group. So that was really when we started becoming friends.
It's funny because I don't remember like greeting you, but I feel like the first time I had met you was at the Barn House at New King, and it was like the young adults community group that Pastor Aaron was leading, and we were sitting next to each other, and you had like the coolest bag. You know what I'm talking about. You're like, there's a little wallet that's a Pop-Tart, and the bag looks like a toaster.
my toaster Pop-Tart bag, and like it comes out and opens. It is.
Yeah, I remember I saw that and I was like, oh, I want to be friends with her.
I'm getting all the background. I didn't know that. I have a lot of weird clothes and bags. So it's kind of like background for me. I'm just like, oh, that one, or like the one that looks like a house or something.
Oh, yeah, I like that one too.
That's so cool. I think I remember seeing you in church. Like that was my first memory of you, and that's cool. That's your first memory of me. That's really awesome.
Yeah. Oh, and maybe we should add, like, since then, we co-led like a women's Bible study together, like on Zoom. And you've continued to do that. And now I'm just a member in one of your Zoom Bible studies.
That is cool. But yeah, there's definitely like stages between that. And I was really interested in looking into this subject when you told me, because I had seen that this friendship was different than a lot of other friendships I had, where like we were coming together on similar prayer requests sometimes, or like certain events going on at the same time for us. And like it was actually at the Books and Brunch where I'd start asking for prayer about being more comfortable in these settings. And eventually, like you said, now I'm doing community groups, but I was really far away from that point before. And like it just really showed me how God does put people around you in certain situations to help build us up. And that's what I really felt with us, because we kept like accidentally having or like similar prayer requests or like the same thing. And it just felt really like God had wanted us to meet and like come together the way we did. And we did eventually start doing a Bible study. And it's cool just to see like this transformation, and even how like it happened during COVID, which is like a lot of stuff got messed up, but it also helped connect me with some more people, and like I guess realize the importance, or like not forget the importance of checking in on each other and like praying for each other. And we were looking at like verses to do with that, which we're gonna go through some of them, but one that you guys might be familiar is just from, I definitely noted it down, I have too many tabs everywhere. But just like Proverbs 27:17, this just says, iron sharpens iron and one man sharpens another. And that's what it really felt like we were sharpening each other, we were praying for each other, we were being accountable to each other. And that's like a kind of biblical friendship that we do see portrayed in the Bible. And for this video, we are looking at a particular biblical friendship, and I wondered if you could just tell everyone what that is.
Sure. Okay, so we're gonna be looking at 1 Samuel and the friendship of David and Johnathan. And just so we're not like taking full credit for it for this, I just wanted to share that it was June of 2019 at New King Church, we had a pastor visit. His name is Pastor Mac. That's all I have for my notes. But he came and preached a sermon on a Saturday to like the leadership at New King and just church members who wanted to come, on friendship. And so he looked at David and Johnathan and to kind of, and I feel like that just made a big impression on me. And he went through like eight lessons about friendship from that, which we're not going to go into all of those, and we'll look at a few different things. But how he kind of set it up was he defined like what classic friendship is, and he said classic friendship and how it was thought of back in the time of 1 Samuel was a commitment to virtue and moral improvement. So just like that proverb you just read, Sakile, about iron sharpens iron, that's exactly it. But he argued that today what we have is what he would call therapeutic friendship, which is like unconditional acceptance of everything that your friend does. And he said, this is never, ever healthy.
Well, thank you for explaining where your inspiration comes from. The more you describe it, I'm like, oh, I definitely remember being there. I thought it was. But when you said it was like on a Saturday and like all the verse, I'm like, yes, I remember that. And it was like such a great service. And they did make me think, because I have definitely had plenty of those friendships, and I'm not sure it's really, like, I want to stress it's not really saying it's bad to have friendships outside of the church. I think it's really important to. But I guess it's like how you're conducting yourself in that friendship and how you're navigating yourself in that friendship. And I remember there was a time where I had 0 Christian friends, but I also wasn't a strong-willed Christian. I was like really lukewarm and mixed up about a lot of stuff. And I definitely remember those dynamics. We're just like, we'll just support each other, like anything we do. And you're just supposed to basically be, which I wrote in my notes, like your friend's fan, which isn't always good. Is say like I've been in the wrong or doing something not good, and I wasn't really held accountable for it, or I can see it in like the kind of friendship you mentioned where we're like, it's about furthering each other and helping each other. Sometimes that doesn't always look like just agreeing with each other or supporting what each other are doing. And I did have some good friends. Like, okay, Jamal was my boyfriend at the time. But yeah, and like another good friend who was actually not doing that. And they were like, actually, I think this is not so good. And I appreciate them for that. But if I didn't even have that, it can really just help perpetuate the problem. And I have noticed this growing culture of like, cut out things, people that are toxic, cut out people that are not helping you be the best version of you. But I think it's important to look at what that is. Is the best version of us like exactly how we are and what we want, or is that something else? And I think like we're always told about growth and being receptive to wisdom, especially in Proverbs where a lot of these great friendship verses are in. And I think it's important to understand that sometimes we do need people, just like when we were kids and our parents would sometimes correct us or instruct us, and God does the same. And to be good friends, sometimes we have to do that as well.
Yeah, I think that's really good. And that kind of leads to this other verse also in Proverbs 27 that we had talked about. It's Proverbs 27:9. And it says, oil and perfume make the heart glad, and the sweetness of a friend comes from his earnest counsel. And kind of like you were saying, maybe like the counsel of a great friend doesn't seem sweet at first.
Yeah.
But later on, then you realize like, oh, that is what I needed.
That's really true. And funnily, okay, so I actually wrote this on I have like so many notes, but as this one's like really related to, I just thought I'd say this one. And it says, and this is really close to the one that you just read, Proverbs 27:6. And it says, faithful are the wounds of a friend, profuse are the kisses of an enemy. And it's just like goes into that further about it doesn't always look how we want it to, or smell like we'd like it to. Not always a cushy, cozy like feeling. Sometimes it will be a friend that cares about you enough to basically correct you. And like it sometimes I think I find it was easier actually not always to say something. So even I'm guilty of this myself for sure. Sometimes I've seen something and I just haven't spoken up about it because I didn't want to come off too harsh, or but maybe like definitely looking back I have a different perspective where it may have been important to, or it could have been helpful. So that's just like another one on that sort of direction. And actually, when we were friends, it wasn't really that you had any behaviors that were like you said anything to me directly that challenged me, but your conduct and your faith challenged me, because I was at a time in life where I was very much struggling with faith, and I saw you, who was very much exhibiting your faith and praying so easily, expectantly for things. And I recognized it as something that was like a problem in my spiritual life with God at the time. And that was a good thing, but not something I really knew how to build. And like, even us just becoming friends and like God putting us together in that way was like this really strong example for me of something it like was a niggling. And I started praying more and asking for prayer about it, and like God did answer that prayer and really help me grow over time. But I remember it was seeing how you were being compared to how I wasn't being. That was one of these red flags for me. Like, I really need to stop evading this topic. So yeah.
That's so cool. And I feel like it's funny how we go in cycles, like just in our life, like cycles of strong faith and like weak faith. And I feel like I could say the same for you, just that I've been at times in the last year where I was really struggling with something, and then I'm like, oh my gosh, Sakile like has so much faith, and I seem to be more like her. So it definitely goes both ways. And actually, one other thing, I guess, yeah, it is on the same topic, that I know I said I wouldn't like pull out anything from Pastor Mac's sermon, but one thing that really stood out was one of his points, and it was like a more fun point, was that we need friends for freedom of expression. And I had written like to let your hair down. And I feel like I just appreciate you for that so much, because I can just get so serious, and like even on our like weekly check-in, I'll be like, okay, like, you know, here's a summary of my week, like here are my prayer requests, and you're just like, do you want to just tell me like what your favorite bands are from high school? like you actually said to me, like, we can just like relax and like catch up. And yeah, I feel like you definitely helped me. I mean, and obviously like our husbands are friends, and the four of us have been able to get together for game nights and just hanging out and like basketball. And but I feel like, yeah, I just appreciate and I guess this could go for any friend, just how a good friend like can bring in a fresh perspective on things, or just make you think differently. And yeah, I just always appreciate how you help me to let my hair down and have more fun.
Thank you. Like, I love what you said, because I feel the same way, that sometimes we do go through seasons. And even like the really well-known verse we quoted about iron sharpens iron is kind of like, I guess at one point one's being sharpened and one's being the sharpener. And you think of it like how you sharpen a knife, like it's really can just be one time and another time. I think that's like an important image to hold on to, because I've definitely felt plenty of times in just seasons of having lower faith, and it's often an example of someone else around me that can help me like recognize that. And like, yeah, like kind of, it feels like in some places we like complimented each other in the opposite way, because sometimes like I never had friendships before that were based on it's not like I wouldn't have friendships where we talk about things, but not like in a spiritual sense, or like really being open to just giving prayer requests and seeing how each other are doing. So I actually found that like as a really important thing for me to get comfortable with and used to, and us just doing it continuously made me so much more comfortable with sharing prayer requests. And that's just something I wouldn't have done. So it's like at the same time when we've been able to kind of swap notes in a way, like I found that really helpful, and now it makes me really confident and comfortable just asking for prayer requests too of other people and for myself. And it is like prayer is like a very important tool, and that was part of it. Like it was just because you would do those, like I know you said it like, well, you could get really focused, but you doing that made me be like, this is normal, this isn't so I don't have to get all guarded or anything, like. So thank you for that, because that like was a big part of helping me do that. Because it's just so much has changed, and I just like praise God for that, because there were so many places where I just needed to address in my spiritual life, and God just did that in all these different places and put great friends like you in my life to help me with that. And I still have loads to learn and always will. That's one thing I'm laughing about a lot, because like I'm talking to loads of different people. They're like, that never goes away. I was like, yeah.
Oh yeah.
Sorry. No, like, did you have something to say?
Oh, I was just gonna say, I feel like it's a good segue into like just taking a look at some of the verses in 1 Samuel 18
Yes.
about David and Johnathan. Just because I know we talked about it last week, but just some of the things that the Holy Spirit like pointed out to you and to me were just so different but complementary. So it's just cool to see again, like, yeah, just different perspectives that friends bring to stuff.
Yeah, that is so true. So that is a really good time to go into this. So I guess we can just kind of give a summary perhaps of like the general dynamic and story that we look at in 1 Samuel.
And I'm wishing our friend from Bible study on Friday was here, because she does such good summary.
They're amazing. Shout out to Shayna.
Yeah. So impressive. I mean, I guess I could just do like a general outline, but so if you look at 1 Samuel 18, in the ESV, the heading on my Bible is actually David and Jonathan's friendship. So basically, it's just 1 Samuel 18 verse 1 that says, as soon as he had finished speaking to Saul, the soul of Johnathan was knit to the soul of David, and Johnathan loved him as his own soul. And Saul took him that day and would not let him return to his father's house. Then Johnathan made a covenant with David because he loved him as his own soul, and Johnathan stripped off the robe that was on him and gave it to David, and his armor, and even his sword, and his bow, and his belt. So that was kind of the start of their friendship. And then so basically David and Johnathan just become great friends. And then you got into 1 Samuel 19, where Jonathan's dad, King Saul, is trying to kill David, and Johnathan plays the role of the protector. And we could go back to that, but just still big picture. Then eventually, just later on in 2 Samuel, the end, 1 Samuel, basically Johnathan and King Saul are killed in a battle. And then, yeah, I guess we can come back to that, but David basically continues his covenant friendship with Johnathan by taking in his son Mephibosheth, and this is later in 2 Samuel. David mourns the death of Johnathan, Anyway, I'm not so good at summarizing, but we can go back to the beginning.
That was perfect. That's the basics. That's like pretty much what we see in the Bible about David and Jonathan. And like, yeah, a few of the notes you said like came to mind. So it was like, this is like a pretty intense friendship, like from the off. Like, and it's, I mean, that kind of idea, I wrote down that phrase we now have about like the shirt off your back, but like quite literally, Jonathan takes off his armor. And I noticed that in the Bible a lot, there's like foreshadowing and like kind of examples of stuff. And like that of taking off his armor and giving it to him is like, he is willing to protect him. Another thing I noted about that is just that, you know, the Lord is a part of this friendship. We were talking about also like in our own experience what godly friendships and relationships like within the church can look like. And this is like a very clear, evident part of their friendship. It talks about there being this covenant between them. And one of the verses I wrote down is from, let me think. So Proverbs 17:17. We both actually wrote down this verse. And it says, a friend loves at all times, and a brother is born for adversity. And like, I think this sums up a lot of what they went through. I mean, this is not like a very simple situation. Like, Jonathan's dad is the current king. David has been promised to be king by God. And really, I mean, Jonathan would be the heir currently, if not David. And he's in this between with his actual father, who's also the king, who is just very jealous of David to the point where he is like making multiple attempts on his life. And it's like a pretty sticky situation, you'd think. But it is like, it was really interesting to me just how Jonathan was so ready and committed to doing what was right, which of course was what God had planned and ordained. Despite all of these really sticky crossovers and allegiances that he may have felt and obligations to his own family and future. So I found that really amazing.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I feel like, yeah, you would think that Jonathan might be jealous of David or he might want to be king, but we just see him over and over again protecting David. And yeah, there's even like in chapter 19, like Jonathan's dad, King Saul, is talking to Jonathan about, and his servants, about how he wants to kill David. But you know, Jonathan tells David about the plots, and like listens in, and he 1 Samuel 19:7 said, Jonathan called David and Jonathan reported to him all these things. So I mean, he just, and then in chapter 20, Jonathan like warns David again. So it's just.
Yeah. And I know you're in the Samuel section.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I remember one of the notes that I had written down that we were talking about, like this, that stood out to me, was just that there was a point in this friendship, which has already like been through a lot. So let's just be honest. It's like a lot going on for them, where actually, you know, David does have to like give Jonathan a bit of a reality check, I guess. Basically, there's more news now that of like his father's intentions, bad intentions towards David. And Jonathan is like, no, like he tells me everything. Like he would have mentioned this to me. This is probably before some of the verses you read, but I know there's a break where like he kind of goes for David, King Saul, and then doesn't for a while, and then it could have been somewhere in between that. But he is like against David and actively trying to deal with him. And Jonathan's basically like, David, that can't be true. And David's like, it is true. Like, this is definitely happening. And I felt for Jonathan a bit there, because he's like, he is in this really torn, kind of messed up situation where he has now have split allegiances on both sides, and he's like in this kind of state of like disbelief, or not like wanting to accept it, denial really. And here, I mean, I guess tied to Jonathan's commitment, their commitment to each other, their strong friendship there. Also this idea of that you were talking about, Lucy, from that sermon, just about sometimes it doesn't always look good. Like, this is, I think, the only proper disagreement, or like we see where they're kind of going back and forth with each other of their friendship. You know, David's like, no, you're not right about this. This is the truth. And Jonathan does accept this, but it's not easy. And this is like, that's the example that stood out to me, is like, that would be hard. It'd be really difficult. Yeah. I'm glad this wasn't like, this isn't any friendship I can vaguely relate to, but never. I mean, it's wonderful.
Kill me.
Oh my goodness, it's like quite terrifying at the same time, but it's like also, you know, really cool to just see how much love there is there between them for each other as friends, and what they're willing to do. And I remember when they split up, though, they find out, okay, it's definitely true, your life is in danger, David. And they were really distraught, like that they would probably never see each other again. And they just had to do this for like David's safety. And this also, like, I guess Jonathan betrayed his dad by like going behind his back to do this. So we're kind of nearing closer to the end there. So what kind of happens after that? So they do part ways at one point.
Yeah, and I was looking at exactly what you're talking about. So that is 1 Samuel 20, just the end of that chapter. So basically at that point, David was like hiding out in a field, and Jonathan goes out with like a servant little boy and says, you know, basically he shoots these arrows out into the field and says, they have like a code that's like, well, if he gathers up the arrows and comes back to me, you know, then you need to go, and if not, or something along those lines. And Jonathan's like shooting these arrows, telling the boy like, hurry, be quick, don't stay. And that was like his code word to David that he needs to leave. But in 1 Samuel 20:41, it said, as soon as the boy was gone, David rose from beside the stone heap, that was where he was hiding, and fell on his face to the ground and bowed 3 times, and they kissed one another and wept with one another, David weeping the most. Then Jonathan said to David, go in peace, because we have sworn both of us in the name of the Lord, saying, the Lord shall be between me and you, and between my offspring and your offspring forever. And so David rose and departed, and Jonathan goes back to the city. So yeah, we kind of see that's like their last meeting together, and then Jonathan and King Saul end up dying in a battle later on. I think that's in 2 Samuel. And then I'm just trying to go there. And then we see like in 2 Samuel verse 9, David says, "Is there still anyone left of the house of Saul that I may show kindness to for Jonathan's sake?" And I feel like, yeah, and then so basically it turns out Jonathan did have a son named Mephibosheth who is crippled in his feet, the Bible says, and David calls for him to come to the palace and says, "Don't be afraid. I will show you kindness for the sake of your father Jonathan, and I will restore you to all the land of Saul your father, and you shall eat at my table always." So basically, yeah, we just see Jonathan and David's relationship continuing on even past Jonathan's death, where the next generation, David's taking care of Jonathan's son, which he definitely didn't have to do.
No. Yeah, and like we were talking about this a bit because I was reading all these verses. Here's another one in Proverbs 18:24 that just says, "A man of many companions may come to ruin, but there is a friend who sticks closer than a brother." And it's kind of just made me think about, yeah, I mean, you could have a lot of acquaintances and stuff, but like really the most meaningful, closer friendships I have are in a pretty small circle. And but I was seeing this, and we've already read like a bunch of Proverbs verses, and I was like, who wrote Proverbs again? Who wrote Proverbs again? And I just checked that, and it was Solomon, the son of David. And that really fits into the verses that you just read, where like this is now David's son, and he wrote so much of Proverbs, and there's a lot of friendship rich and focused verses in Proverbs. And it did make me think, like, even just how we saw that friendship transcend, and they had this covenant, like, your offspring to mine, like they really hoped they would be lifelong friends. That we still see that through what maybe he heard. I could only imagine maybe David sharing these stories of how he got to where he was, and like who helped him with that his son really learned about friendship and wrote about it, and this like another way of it just living on, this friendship of David and Johnathan. I was like, that's interesting that his son writes about friendship this way.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, and I remember you brought that up, and I was like, I don't know who wrote. I can't remember who wrote.
I can't remember.
Proverbs. So yeah, that was super cool. But yeah, I feel like I guess we could just encourage all the listeners to definitely go and check out the story and read it for yourself. Because there's just so many things that you can take from the story of David and Jonathan's friendship. But yeah, Sakile, is there like one thing that stands out to you the most from their story?
I'm gonna have a quick look here and see if I have recurring notes. I mean, there's a few things. Like, I loved how rooted it was in God, and this is, I think, the most, like, the thing that stands out to me the most is even now I feel blessed that friends that I had from before I was like really properly focused on God, I've been able to reconnect with, you know who you are, and we've been now able to root our friendship in God, and it's just so much better. Like before, we would not have like that outside wisdom or God helping us with anything, and now alongside all the years we've known each other, we also have this strong foundation in God. So for me, like how founded they were in God, even like using words like covenant and just like the example, and it's a legacy through their children. Yeah, I think it's just amazing to have friends that like you have a strong foundation with God as like this common ground. And for me, that was the most remarkable thing about Jonathan and David's friendship.
I love that. I totally agree. That was so well said. I can't follow that up.
I mean, this was your whole topic. Like,
Yeah.
I'm so happy that you asked me to do this, and like in the year anniversary of when we've been doing all of this, and like, I wouldn't have learned or thought of any of these things really if you didn't do this. You're like, you didn't say it, but you've like facilitated and let us hear just kind of how we were talking about how like friendships, we can just push each other and like help each other to grow. So I am so thankful for you to like coming on here, suggesting this, spending time to talk to all the unknowners and be here. And like, it's been really cool looking for this topic.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. And I think Jamal should add that sound effect where the people are like cheering at the end.
He'll now do it. Like it'll like happen.
Well, thank you so much, friend, for having me on, and I'm so thankful for you.
You too. Thank you for being here. Thanks for making this happen. I've been excited about it for a while. And I'll speak to you soon. And everyone, I hope you enjoy and like get some insights. Feel free to comment any thoughts you have or your own experiences of like this friendship. We'd love to hear from you. And let's continue to explore our unknown years. I've never done that, but like, there we go.